Our kitchen table is the heart of the home, and when springtime comes, the meals change a bit. So I wanted to bring you along to show you what we eat in a day for breakfast, lunch, and dinner, as we have crepes, a salmon sandwich, as well as chicken piccata. And if you're not hungry already, I think that might be about to change. If you're new here, welcome. My name is Jill, and I'm a homeschooling mom to 5 kids ages 10 to 2. And as you can see, I am never short of help in the kitchen. We are constantly trying out new recipes in our kitchen to make sure that my kids grow up with an adventurous palate and willing to try about anything new. One of the tips that I have found super helpful in this experience is to make sure that they get in the kitchen with me as much as possible, and that really helps them to be willing to try those new things that we've made. So today I'm starting off with my tiniest helper, and of course she made a little bit of mess with the blender, but I don't mind that at all as long as they're with me and learning and then willing to try those things once they come out of the pan. We started off by mixing up our crepe batter. Now this is something that you can do the night before or you can do the morning of, as long as it has at least 30 minutes to chill in the refrigerator, and so that's what we decided to do. With our laying hens in full swing, we have so many eggs, so I'm always looking for a creative way to use up what we have. Not only was that the catalyst behind the crepe recipe, but it's also the reason that we decided to make homemade brioche buns for the salmon sandwiches we're going to have for lunch. My kids absolutely love brioche, and not only does it take milk, but it also adds eggs and butter, so it's a really rich dough, and another great way for us to use up some eggs along our day. Now, I know for many people, making bread can be super intimidating, and for others, it seems like second nature. My confession is that until 2020, I had never made bread, and I actually hadn't been too much into the idea of growing my own food either. But at that point, it really awakened something in me that I needed to be able to provide these things for my family. So I decided to take one new skill, like making bread, and make it my focus for at least a month until I felt like I had got it down to a level that I could do it without worrying that what I was going to make was going to completely fail. Now, there's always something you can turn your wasted doughs into. There was a lot of crouton making going on in our house and a lot of breadcrumbs put in the refrigerator or the freezer so we could have them available for recipes down the road. But that time spent in the kitchen learning that new skill was invaluable. Now, back to the brioche dough itself, I mixed that up the night before and went to bed because it needed to set in the refrigerator for a long ferment process and stay cold overnight. This is a recipe from the King Arthur website, and I will make sure to put any of the recipes that I actually use down in the comments. Some of them I kind of make up as I go, but for things like the bread and the chicken piccata, there is a recipe that I followed, and I will link all of those down below as well as some of the gear. Now, if you haven't noticed a recurring theme, my kids are definitely not camera shy. If anything, they actually seek it out, and there's a lot of those funny moments like he just had on the camera that don't make the final cut. But I love leaving some of that into just so you guys can see the character and the fun that we kind of have around our house, even if I keep the audio down for the most part, just so you can hear something a little more pleasant than all of the chatter that goes on around here most of the day. Now, that was my first time flipping a crepe because this is a recipe that my son actually brought home from a homeschool co-op that we recently went to try out, and it was a learning experience for me, so he's kind of showing me the ropes there. Now here we're making our filling for the crepes. It's a beautiful cream cheese and it's made with whipped cream. So I'm whipping it up here in my pantry. I love using my mixer to whip it up because it just goes so fast. So this is just straight whipping cream, nothing else added to it. And then there in the bowl, I have some maple syrup, cream cheese, and a little salt. And it's really delicious once it's folded into this recipe. So once I get the stiff peaks here, that's when I'm adding it in. And then we're gonna take it back in the other room and I'm gonna let my crepe expert show me exactly the way to properly stuff a crepe per his lesson in class. To start the rebuilding of life, the roads that lay open are many when the old one's gone under the knife, and I can feel. His first round, he prepared enough for all of the kids to have one of their very own dusted them with powdered sugar, and then delivered them over to a table full of waiting brothers and sisters who couldn't wait to have their first bite of crepes. He's been raving about them for a couple weeks, so they were super excited to see exactly what they taste like. I have to tell you, they did not disappoint. There were lots of requests for more, and there was no leftover stuffing. I'm not really sure what happened to it, but I saw a few little kiddos with some dirty fingers and some whipped cream faces before the morning was over. With breakfast complete and cleanup done, we went ahead and got some work done on our schoolwork while the rolls were over rising on the stove. Now, once they were ready to go in, I used one of the egg whites left over from the recipe of the brioche to go ahead and do a nice egg wash on top before placing them in the oven. Now, an egg wash is absolutely not necessary, but what it does is give it that beautiful, shiny look when it's all completed. I have done experiments in the past where I baked off a bunch of loaves of bread and done some with the yolk, some with the white, and also just left some plain, and all of them turned out delicious. The only difference is really the look. So if you ever skip that in a recipe or see it and don't want to waste an egg or don't have an extra egg at that time, don't really hesitate to just leave it out. It's more for presentation in my personal experience than anything else. One of my favorite things about spring is that the kids can have so much free time outside and the weather is just beautiful. So I sent them out to have a break from schoolwork and decided to go ahead and get a jump start on our lunch plan. So I started to chop up some of the ingredients from our salmon sandwiches, plus baked off the buns and set them out to cool so they would be ready to go when the sandwiches were complete. Now, these sandwiches are super easy to make and really a great quick recipe. If you don't want to put them on buns at all, you can do these with crackers. It would be delicious for some sourdough crackers, just like a nice dip. But there's lots of options and different ways to incorporate this. This is just what works super well for our family. So I'm chopping up onion and celery, and then it's going to be mixed into some canned salmon. Now, when I originally came across this recipe, it was using fresh salmon fillets, but I'm always looking for ways that I can have something to be made easily and quickly, and also something that is a little bit economical cost-wise. Keeping around fresh salmon isn't always the best, so when I can have a canned salmon, see my little thief there? When I am cutting, there is never a shortage of somebody willing to grab something off the cutting board, and she is definitely one that is guilty. She's going to be back here for more in just a second. But back to the sandwiches. I love keeping canned salmon. It gives us a lot of versatility, and for a quick lunch like this, especially if you're not making the bread, this is an easy one to go to. So I drained off the water, we flake up the salmon. Into that bowl, I'm adding onions, celery, some homemade mayo. That's what looks super yellow. My chickens lay very vibrant yolks, so all of my mayo turns out super yellow, but it is absolutely delicious. So back to it, it's celery, onions, mayo, and some lemon juice, and then of course salt and pepper and a handful of chives. You won't see me add that on camera because I actually forgot in that moment, and when I was going back to it, I threw those in because it really is a delicious addition. And I mentioned off the top, no shortage of helpers. So here we have my littlest going ahead and doing the mixing, but sister thinks that looks pretty fun too. So we're getting ready to pull up another chair, throw in another spoon, and if a little hits the ground as a result of the extra spoon, it'll be all right. They just really love working together. And again, that's my secret to getting them involved and willing to try new things. I'll take the mess and trade it for kids with adventurous appetites and even a little attitude here. You can see she wants her spoon back. It happens all the time, but once she got it, it all worked out. At this point, you can refrigerate or freeze it if you want to chill it off really quickly. We just went ahead and cut up those buns and stuffed up those sandwiches. My plan was to serve this with a homemade potato salad, but after that breakfast, my kids were actually still pretty full and they decided we should just skip it and eat the sandwiches because they knew they would love it and needed to save some room for dinner. We are in the middle of baseball season, and if you are a fellow baseball mom, you know exactly what that means. Dinner is either super, super early or way late. So on this night, the goal was to have dinner early, and with that being the case, we decided to forego the side dish, although we did end up pulling out some salad as well as some sauerkraut to go along with. So not completely solo, it worked out super good, and everybody was ready for the afternoon. Now, of course, this cues up kitchen cleanup number 2. I will say that I never had an idea that I would be running my dishwasher more than once a day or that I would spend so much time sweeping up. but that's just the joy of a kitchen in full use. We got a little more schoolwork accomplished, little miss down for her nap, and then it was time to go ahead and start working on that early dinner because we didn't want to miss baseball practice, which you'll see how that turns out at the end. I didn't quite nail it, but the meal itself was delicious. So let's jump in. Now, anytime I pull out my apron when I'm going to be working with something oily or greasy, somebody else here always feels like they should have one on too. So once we got suited up and ready to go, I pulled out the chicken that I had thawing in the refrigerator and we got started. Now, all I'm doing here is just pulling it out and putting it on plates so it makes it easy to take over to the other side to the stove. But I am mixing up some flour, salt, and pepper to get these ready for a light dredge. I typically don't fry foods in my house at all. I hate the mess in my kitchen. I hate just the whole thing. But I do find this chicken piccata is super delicious, so every once in a while I'll make an exception and do something like this. What'd you say, babe?
9, 8 plus 3.
8 plus 3 is what?
It's 4.
4. I think 8 plus 3 is 11. I couldn't help but share her little banter there. She loves this little notepad that she got for Christmas and really cannot wait to do her school on it like everybody else does in the house. So with her math being complete, we headed over to the stove. I love this huge cast iron skillet. When I first got it, we only had 2 kids, and my husband said it was so huge and thought we would never actually need that size of a pan. Little did we know the future and the way that our family would shape up. I can tell you I could probably use 2 of those and keep them going full time. As you can see, my second round over there on this side waiting to go in. But it is an absolute must in our kitchen. I use it all the time. So if you don't have a huge cast iron skillet, I highly recommend it. With the chicken browned off, I went ahead and threw in the rest of the onion that I chopped up earlier in the day into the brown bits at the bottom of the skillet. And this is some dehydrated garlic. I grew an amazing stash of garlic last year and dehydrated some. Looking back, I wish I had dehydrated more because I left it sliced like that, and then I can pull out the flakes as you see here that I'm adding to this dish, or when I'm out of garlic powder, I can just grind up those flakes in my little spice grinder and make my own homemade garlic powder, and the smell is so, so good. Also to the pot, I'm adding some chicken stock, or I'm cheating here actually and using the Better Than Bouillon, some lemon juice. Again, if you don't have fresh lemons, you can use the juice itself. Another one of my cheats is to use some lemon essential oil if you have one that's food grade and able. It's super concentrated, doesn't take up many drops to actually get the flavor that you're looking for, and it's a nice cheat if you don't have either of those on stock. The other thing that I'm doing is making some noodles to go along with this. I would have typically roasted off some potatoes, but I don't have any. I planted all my extras in the garden, and I'm not picking up my next box until this Friday. Now, here's my confession and where I totally failed on this meal. I know how long it takes to make this, but I failed to consider the time it takes me to move the cameras around and get everything set up for filming. So this took me a little bit longer than it needed to in order for the guys to get it before they headed out the door for practice. To compensate for my timing error, they thought it would be no problem to go ahead and help themselves to those awesome chicken thighs that were sitting over there cooling, waiting on the sauce to finish. With the pasta complete, I brought it over to drain, and I just wanted to show you the way I have my colander in my pan in case you haven't seen this before. I used to pour everything into the colander, but if you just pop it right on top and push it on your pan, you don't have to do that, and none of the noodles are going to go down the drain. We have the boys off to practice, the sauce has reduced beautifully, and my tiny little helper here is coming in to check the oven timer. The girls are super excited for dinner, and in her mind, when that thing goes off, it's ready. To finish the sauce, we're adding capers, some sun-dyed tomatoes from my garden last year, as well as some heavy cream. I'd like to take just a quick second to thank you so much for taking the time to hang out in our little corner of YouTube. If you haven't already, go ahead and hit that subscribe button and come back for more. We love sharing what's going on around our house with others. And the community that we're growing from the comments has been a true blessing to our family. To finish up the sauce, we're going to heat this through, Add the chicken back that's been setting out over on the side, and make sure to get it flipped over and coated on all sides, letting it warm up and just simmer until it all melts together beautifully. Now, some of my ladies love their chicken on the side, while others love it placed right on top. I wish you all could smell how amazing my kitchen smells right now, and I hope that you try this out at home. I'll make sure to put the link down in the comments. I hope you've been inspired to try out some new delicious spring meals, as well as maybe pick up a new skill. If you haven't made some bread before, go try to bake some. I don't think you'll be disappointed. My hope for you is that you jump in your kitchen and make something new. If you'd like some more inspiration, check out this playlist and come back, because we add another video every single week that usually focuses on what's going on around this kitchen table.